There it
And
is.
we're back.
There it is. We're live.
All
All
right.
right. I had some technical difficulties. I'm the recruiter. Give me some grace. He's the engineer. He would have had no technical difficulties.
There's a reason the clock on my stove still blinks. I'm not a clock programmer.
Can't you write some Python to fix that? Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I probably could, but it's it's a long story because it's probably an 8-bit chip that's in there. Anyway, let's move on.
All right. I didn't shave this morning. You can see the mustache is still there. I didn't think we were going to go live today, but we decided at the last minute, why not do a little battle, a little tete-a-tete, toe-to-toe. I don't know. Head-to-head is tete-a-tete.
Head-to-head.
A little fisticuffs, maybe, about why recruiters have horrible experiences with candidates and why candidates have horrible experiences with recruiters. Because I'm here to tell you, Cory, this is not one-sided, okay?
No, it's not.
It is not just us that suck. It's not just us. Every now and then we have candidates that also suck. And people need to understand that. But we don't go out there, we don't go all over the internet and talk about it. It's not something we do.
I suspect that you do, actually.
We take our licks, man. We take our licks.
I suspect that you do talk about it, but it's in some non-transparent little recruiter portal somewhere. So the topic of transparency does come back at you on this.
All right.
There's probably some like recruiters.gov, where that's just where the you should have seen this candidate. OMG.
We're out in the middle of the Indian Ocean. We do .io.
Brutal. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I've got recruiter fails.
Some good topics. These are some good topics. Let's do it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the experiences that I've had with candidates, dating back now almost 21 years, which blows my mind, have not been all good. In fact, many of them, many of them have been horrific. And yes, to the person who posted on LinkedIn, someone different showed up than the person who did the phone interview. That absolutely has happened to me.
That blew me away. I thought I'd heard that one. That's just how could you tell it was a different person?
Well, I mean, first of all, the client knew because it was a Zoom interview. So they actually saw the person, and then somebody else showed up at their doorstep. So I wasn't a part of that interview, but I do know that happened, number one. And number two, it was a very different voice and a very different accent.
Wow. That's the most egregious. I don't think that might take the title because that's just so cheeky. It's unbelievable.
It's brutal.
I mean, I could see appearance-wise, like if you'd interviewed me 6 months ago versus now, you'd say, who is that fatty that showed up 6 months ago? And versus the shining example of physical fitness you see today. So that might have, that I could see that happening. But what you've explained is terrible. So what happened, if you don't mind? Did you ever find out how that ended?
Well, I mean, with that particular, so it's only happened to our firm that I recall twice in history, which is 2 times more often than it should ever happen. But I've had clients where it's happened to multiple times. So I've had clients reach out to me and say, we've talked to this person on the phone, and either it appears as though they're typing on their keyboard, looking up answers, or doing something that is like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be interviewing right now. What exactly are you doing at the moment? So that's happened. And then we've also had people just say, that a different person showed up. Then, yeah.
Well, to acknowledge that candidates aren't necessarily all made out of flax and strands of gold. I remember bringing in a tech fellow. This was early 2000s at a role you placed me on, I believe. And he lasted a single morning and just disappeared. We never saw him again.
Really?
which actually brings me to one of the things that I've noticed in recruitment relationships. We talked about this a little bit last time we were together, and it's why do you think, I know you do this, but you're a statistical anomaly in your industry, right? Recruiters' interest in candidates seem to stop at the front door on placement. And then it's bye.
Yeah.
Bye. Why is that?
Um, I wish I knew, man. I wish I knew. I mean, for me, and I don't even know how many conversations today with people that either I've placed once, twice, or three times throughout their career. Um, for me, it just makes sense. It just makes sense to stay close to that person, because even when you look at a database of candidates, so if you're a recruiter today and you were a recruiter back in, let's just say 5 years ago, that person that you put to work 5 years ago is now doing something possibly different, more than likely more senior,
Right.
more than likely still relevant to what you do for a living. So why would you ever lose touch with that person? So purely from the perspective of grow your business, it never makes sense to lose touch with people. Now I've had plenty of people say, well, you only do it because you're looking forward to when they leave. And that's clearly not. You know me well enough to know that that's not the case. Because the last thing I want to do is put you somewhere where you ultimately, not that you don't leave, but you ultimately leave because you don't like it. I'd rather you be there for the term of that tour of duty, as Reid Hoffman likes to say, and then have a conversation with your boss and say, look, I'm ready to go. I'm not happy here anymore. And I've had those conversations many, many times with people. And they think to call me. Now, they can't call me unless they tell their boss, unless they tell the person that hired them through me that they're calling me. Otherwise, I'm not going to touch them. My good friend Sean Plowman, and I agree on just about everything in our industry except for that one thing. Like, if I put you to work, Cory, at SAP, and you tell me you want out of SAP, I'll help you on one condition. You go to the person that hired you through me and tell them you're coming back to me to get hired somewhere else. And if that condition is not met, it's not going to happen. But no, so again, we want to encourage people to ask questions. We want to encourage people to comment. And this is going to be a short one, but we need to get into the meat of this. And I really want to know, Cory, your experiences with recruiters have not always been rainbows and lollipops. So give me some of the dirty on what has transpired with with recruiters in your experience.
Sure. I mean, I've been in common scenarios such as, especially in my earlier days when I know it's hard to believe, less savvy about the way the industry works. When I'd be, I'd get a call from a recruiter, and it wasn't the common theme you're going to hear from me is lack of transparency as to how the process works. Right. In my early days, I didn't know it was a big deal to work with more than one recruiter at once until I found out I was being submitted by two different parties to the same role, right? And what effect that actually has downstream, right? For me, it's just my outcome is to land a role. My outcome isn't to make the recruiter happy necessarily, right? From that perspective, in the early days, it seemed like more of a realtor relationship, right? Where someone like you is up against the perception that it's commodity work when it isn't, because we don't know what happens behind the scenes and we don't know what happens with relationships. And that's one thing I think needs to shift, right? Because I'll give you another example. I was in one of my career mistakes was went out to Chicago working at a company that I won't name, and it wasn't a great experience. Ended up coming back. But one of the recruiters that was trying to place me on the way out, I had a conversation with, and he asked me about my intended rate. And this was my mistake. I said, oh, this was in the 90s, so a long time ago. I said, oh, I don't know, 60, 65. And he says, oh, 60,000 a year? That's pretty reasonable. I said, no. An hour. And this was back when that was a lot of money.
Right.
I sound really old when I say this. So for me, the impression that I got from him, of course, he's trying to maximize that margin. And I know what the rate was at that time, right? Well versed, because I had been looking. The purpose of the example is that the transparency issue means we're never sure as software people how to play that game, because there's always this perception that you're leaving something out on the table, which we don't like.
Yep.
And then there's an issue of how does the process behind the scenes actually work. Not that you got to know where money is made, but for example, the condition that sometimes gets attached, and I don't know what it's called contractually, but when you place somebody and they don't work out with a certain period of time, some folks like to attach some extra work to that to find a placement candidate, right? Like as a hiring manager, for me, that's really important to know, and that doesn't always get discussed.
Right.
I've been in that situation a couple of times where I just had no alternative when things don't work out. So both as a candidate and as a hiring person, I've struggled with the lack of transparency, and that's something that I don't care for, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's where you and I have had pretty open conversations about it, but it's not something I feel like I'm comfortable just opening up with anyone on the street.
Well, you are doing that now because we are LinkedIn Live and this is going forward.
Too late.
I should have told you.
Gosh, does that mean this goes on social media?
No, I think the interesting thing about what you just said, though, Cory, is that, when you think about people that work for consulting firms, like when you're in a consulting firm and that consulting firm, let's say they charge their customers, $200 an hour for work that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you make, and you likely know what the customer is being charged for the work that you're doing on site. Maybe you make $125,000 a year, maybe you make $200,000 a year, but that client is being charged $200 an hour for your work.
Yep.
And maybe you have 3 or 4 or 5 different clients that you work on that all are being charged at $200 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
You know those numbers.
Not everybody does.
A lot of times they do, but yeah,
Yep.
You're right. Not everybody does. A lot of people, I would say, and Anthony should be on this part of it, but a lot of people don't even know how the company itself makes money.
Right. Yeah. Common.
But I would say from our perspective, I just had a client text me, not more than 25 minutes ago and say, look, I know what you're paying. I know what you're charging us for her. What are you paying her? Now, I know throughout my industry, 98% of the people, 99% of the people I know in my industry would have responded with, that's Wizard of Oz stuff. You can't know that. We can't. Why would you even ask that? That seems like, and they would dance and dance and dance. I said, we're charging you 85 and we're paying her 65. Why does that matter? Why does it matter? And it shouldn't matter. If you feel like you're getting what you should be getting out of her and out of us, and she feels like she's getting what she should get out of us, how does it matter?
I think theoretically it shouldn't matter.
But why did we make it matter? How did we make that matter?
Well, I think so. If I dig a little deeper into it, I think perhaps it's the perception by this point. So what I just threw at you was a little bit baggage. I think that I have, because I've dealt with this for years, and in a non-transparent circumstance.
So many people have it, though.
Yep. Oh, a lot of people have it. And I think if there were more people out there, I'm not trying to disparage the industry, right? Contrary to our mantra here, but I think the perception is almost stronger than reality. The perception of a lack of transparency, it kind of breeds the impression that there's something nefarious to it, which is rarely the case in life. You never attribute things to malice, but I think that's partly where conversations like this are really helpful, right? So if you understand what really goes on behind the scenes and how some of those agreements are structured, then there's really not a lot of magic to it anymore. But if you don't, then you could easily have a negative perception of it simply because nothing's said.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
It does. And then I think people get defensive when they have to say it too. Mm-hmm. So I think there's this other side where, I've had people say, well, you should just take $5. You should pay me the 65 and charge the client 70. And I'm like, okay, what about unemployment insurance? What about errors and omissions insurance? What about workers' comp insurance? What about FICA, FUTA, SUTA? What about the overhead of cutting that check?
Yeah.
What about the payroll service that we use?
Yep.
All of those things. So you think $5 covers all of that
I
for
bet.
the
I
life
bet.
of you being here?
I bet if you ask people on the street, they wouldn't even know what percentage that truly is.
Right.
It's the same thing. The age-old thing about uh, going in as a contractor and you could take a higher rate versus an employee because the benefits cost XYZ. How many
Yeah.
times have you seen the XYZ broken out separately on a sheet?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would
So
say
yeah,
from,
does it cost more? Probably yes. I would absolutely say that. And having run a small business, yes. But is it quantifiable? It sure is. But is it quantified and expressed? No. So I
yeah,
think there's that blanket of mystery probably tends to lead in this direction, and I'm guilty of it as a software person. If I see a group executing and righteously building software, and I don't see a plan getting discussed, and I don't see anybody standing up at a whiteboard doing design work, I conclude that it's not happening, and what's
yeah,
probably going to come out is something that isn't quite as planned. All right, that's maybe too much engineer brain in the equation, but when I think about the recruitment scenario, unless I'm dealing with, I have a really high degree of trust. I'm never quite sure what's actually going on behind the scenes because I can't see
yeah.
it.
No, I think you're onto something there, man. Because I think it's, if you don't tell me, then you're clearly hiding something. I think that's probably what it boils down to is, in from a recruiter to a candidate, if you're not telling me, then you're definitely hiding something. And it works both ways. Like if you're not going to tell me what you currently make, Cory, then you're hiding something. Like either you're
Mhm.
making far less than you think you should, and you don't want me to know because you think I'm going to take advantage of you, which
Mhm.
I'm not here to tell you people in my industry don't take advantage of people, because I know they do.
Mhm.
Trust me, I know they do. Um, so it's either you're not telling me because you think I'm going to take advantage of you, or you're not telling me because you feel like, which a lot of people do, they feel like they make so much or made historically so much that any opportunity that comes their way, they're not going to be looked at favorably because those companies can't afford them. And therefore, they're not going to get the opportunity. So you're hiding something. Now, if I don't tell you what they're making or what the client is willing to pay, then I'm hiding something, because I either want to pay you less and save them money, or something else, whatever that something
Yeah.
else might be. But there's this, push and pull just on that one point.
Mhm.
And if that one point comes up as being that difficult to get to the bottom of, then the whole relationship is built on a little bit of mistrust.
I agree. In fact, this kind of, while you were talking, I was thinking to myself, what other model is out there that I have pursued because I liked it better in terms of transparency? And I'll give you an honest example: buying a car. Right? I don't buy new because I hate the dealership experience because you're getting taken advantage of on levers you can't see, generally speaking, and I just
Yeah.
don't have the patience for the haggle. So I will go to. I'm not going to advertise places where I buy cars, but I go to one of those the used places that has all of the facts sitting there. It's no haggle. It's fixed price. This is our markup. Take it or leave it. So it's all the facts are on the table. And I've gone back to there's a specific place that does that I like in the Phoenix area, and I bought 3 vehicles from them. So I just like it's no BS. I know exactly what I'm dealing with, and they got me as a relationship out of having a pleasant experience. It's a different mentality, maybe less transactional, like you said. This is a relationship, and I think with that philosophy, then you start getting into caring about the candidate longer term. By definition, you're guarding them more carefully on the way in, and you're probably wanting to follow up when they transition as well, which leads into the future um, candidates and their referrals and so forth that we talked about before.
Yeah.
So I think what I'd like to see is the transparency, even if it paints you in a light that looks less competitive. It's really about the relationship, and I think candidates, the mature ones at least, would understand that. Otherwise, you're just in it for money, and where does that lead?
Right. No, it really does boil down to trust, though. I think, the transparency leads to trust. I think would you agree with that?
I think so.
I mean, it's like any relationship. If you're not going to tell me, we withhold. When we first start dating somebody, we withhold. We're guarded. We're protective. We don't want to share everything and scare them away.
Hmm.
All those sorts of things happen, and I think that happens in this. But the difference in this, I mean, we get that intimate. When you're talking to somebody about how much they make within the first 25 minutes of knowing them, I mean, that's not an easy conversation.
No, it's very personal. I mean, this is how they're putting food on the table.
Very personal.
It's definitely a trust thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the transparency first and foremost. That's one of the big challenges you have with recruiters. I don't know that I addressed it well, but I addressed it. What are some other things that you struggle with as far as recruiters go?
Well, I think one thing that could be changed is the protocol, the implicit protocol. Make it explicit. Ask are you working with anybody else? Realtors ask this question. They often have you sign a buyer's agreement. Recruiters don't do that. In fact, I have to do it, right? I say, hey, just so you know, so-and-so actually is good friends with so-and-so, because Phoenix, for example, is a small town. So-and-so friend of mine, and they submitted me here. So don't, I have to ask who it is because I'm warned not to do it. That's happened.
Yep.
And I wouldn't be saying that if I didn't know the protocol, but nobody seems to talk about the protocol with the candidate. So I think if we better understood how those relationships actually functioned and what is a no-no in that space, we don't have to have that conversation. But
right.
I've never had that out in the open. It was running into walls, and that again leads to, okay, how do I know who I'm dealing with? Which is a trust issue again, right?
Yeah.
So I think the candidate is necessarily aware of what will get them black eyes in the market, if there is something out there that would have that effect.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm describing this very well, but
no, I think so. So if, like, to your example, if they're being submitted, if you as a candidate were being submitted, multiple times, even just more than once, basically, 2 times to the same company by 2 different recruiters, which has happened to us. Do you think that makes the multiple agencies, look bad, or do you think it makes you look bad, or is it both? And where is the client in that? Where is the hiring authority in that whole? What should they do?
I think it makes everybody look bad. Everybody. It makes the client. If I were, let's say, I'm in that position as the hiring person, what I don't know as a candidate, or what I didn't know, is that, okay, I give you a resume, you're going to lop off the header, lop off my contact information, put your logo on there, and submit it. Standard stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody tells me that as a candidate. Okay. So I'm implicitly trusting that by the time it gets to the hiring manager, I'm not looking at Cory Berg over here with the Phoenix staff logo and Cory Berg here with somebody else's logo. And as the hiring manager, I'm going to go, well, that's kind of silly. Why are we doing this? And maybe I don't even realize that's a duplicate, right? So I'm kind of wasting my time as the hiring person. I don't want to get into that scenario. Maybe it's a more minor problem. But for a candidate, it almost, for me, it makes me feel like, am I trying to pull a fast one on the company? Gosh, this just makes everybody kind of look silly. But
I no longer want to talk to Cory.
Right. All it takes is, okay, by the way, are you working with somebody else? Just so I know. I don't need to know who it is. But if we've already submitted to that company under somebody else's logo, let's not do it again.
Yeah.
And I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of times that's ever been brought up from the recruiter side. It's once, and that was you. Again, not trying to disparage anybody, but I think this is where we could do a better job just explaining how the process works.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, I think that's one of the issues that we have as an industry is we don't walk people through it. And again, I don't know why. It's not there is nothing, how we make the sausage is not gross. It's just it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. And I think
we could change that, Alan. We just kind of narrated our way through it right there, but I'm sure there are things that you go through that I don't appreciate in terms of the amount of work that's involved in the conversations back and forth that I still don't understand. And maybe it takes, that is how change. That is how industry has changed, right? I try to do the same thing from a software standpoint. I mean, software, it's complicated inherently. It takes smart people to do it, but not every decision has to be really complicated or an act of Congress. So I try to pull the wool back and give some transparency to the business on how those decisions get made. Same thing in the recruiting space. By even making some little changes to describe how the process works, I think you're making everybody feel like, okay, I understand the risks, if there are some, enough to just have the conversation up front and stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
I don't think it has to be that tough, but I don't see that conversation happening. Or if it does, maybe it's happening, and I've just been lucky and never been part of it. I don't know.
No, I don't think it's happening to the degree that it needs to. I would say, I think there's a lot of work to be done in that area. I think, the way our process works is we guide them through it. We tell them they're gonna talk to one person on our team, then they're gonna talk to another person on their team. If they move forward, we're gonna ask for references, we're gonna submit them, and we're gonna wait for that client feedback. And we're gonna tell them, do we have a relationship? Like, can I pick up the phone and call Cory and say, dude, I just sent you a candidate who you need to meet. You need to have a conversation with quickly. Or is this a brand new relationship? I think that matters too, because
Yep.
what I hear from candidates is they're like, why does it take so damn long? Why is it taking so long to get feedback? Like, I went through all of this with an agency and now I get no feedback.
Yeah.
Now, no feedback drives me crazy because as an agency, you can call them and say, I haven't gotten feedback and therefore I have none for you.
So this is good, because this is the subject of great angst amongst certainly myself and my colleagues. But what percentage of the time do you just hear nothing from the?
It's lower than it used to be, which is shocking, because as busy as everyone is right now, that is starting to go down precipitously. Now, for us, it's going down, I think, because we're probably not working with as many clients who don't give us feedback, because there's plenty who will. So it's starting to decrease, because the ones who don't give us feedback, I've basically sent them emails and let them know this market's moving way too quickly. If you're not going to give us feedback, we're not going to send you people.
That's what I was going to ask you. Contractually, do you have the ability to define the end criteria as part of the upfront agreement? Can you say, hey, part of this agreement is you're going to give me some substantive feedback at the end?
Because sure, you try.
That's what candidates that's going to ensure a positive experience. I would think everybody has a win-win out of it.
Yeah. I'm sure there are agencies out there who successfully have done that. I've never successfully done that.
Okay.
When we take the requirement, we'll say, what does your week look like for scheduling interviews? Let's assume we have someone for you by Monday of next week. Look at your calendar. Tell me when you can interview those people that we send you on Monday of next week. So we'll try to do that. We'll also say, if I submit somebody to you on Thursday, I don't like going into the weekend with them not knowing what's going on. So if I send them to you on Thursday, can you commit to me to give me feedback by Friday as to, I looked at them and I think they might be worthy, but I'll look at them again on Monday, or I've looked at them and they're not somebody that I want to move forward with, or this person is great. How soon can we get them in here?
I just thought of a new service offering.
What's that?
You know what it is? So we have a person whose job function is the post-interview feedback giver person, right? So the company doesn't have to face it. You don't have to deal with it. Everybody gives that person a summary, and they deal with the feedback.
Internet issues on the engineer side.
Oh, I just saw you go blank. Did I go blank there?
You went blank. Yes.
Bizarre. Okay. Let me repeat it. It's that one crucial step. And I think for candidates, it's very annoying when you don't get substantive feedback. And so I'm sure some people have trouble with it, but that's a personal thing. But it would be interesting to see how we could solve that problem, even if it means offloading it on somebody who's really, really good at giving feedback.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say it's me. I would collect the feedback from the company. Oh, he showed up with sunglasses and he was smoking during the interview. Okay, that's feedback. And then you say, okay, Cory, go call him. And I would be the bad guy that goes and says, by the way, in the future, stop smoking during an interview. Okay. And don't show up with dark shades. So there's somebody to deal with the feedback channel, because I don't know what the hang up is. Sometimes it's uncomfortable giving feedback. Sometimes I don't know if it's litigious, or if there's just not enough time to gather it. From the company side, everybody that does interviews is usually flying around at 900 miles an hour, and it's horrendous. There's an email with the resume. Sometimes it's on the meeting invite, and sometimes it's the wrong person. It's kind of a all over the place. So the feedback, there's usually substantive feedback that's involved. It's just maybe never relayed to HR, maybe never relayed to the recruiter side. It would be awesome if that somehow had a fix.
Even if well, and I love the concept of having somebody do that. I mean, there's, people that will help you collect bills, help you collect payments that you need. And I get called all the time. We'll help you with collections. That would be a great job for a collections person.
Yeah, we get a remark
chase
on
these
LinkedIn.
People and get me feedback.
Somebody on LinkedIn says it's almost as bad as having a job in HR. Well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's a corresponding massive amount of money associated with the rough job like that.
Yeah, you get a percentage of the fee. Like if you get feedback, you get a percentage of the fee when that person goes to work.
Right.
That'd be a cool
job. I'm not
job.
signing up for this. I'm good at giving feedback, but I'm not signing up.
You did say you would do it.
We can try it as a beta. Are there any other comments or feedback from people out there that are watching this? Perhaps some other perspectives.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, these are fun to do, Cory, and we could go on and on about the challenges that recruiters have with candidates and the challenges that candidates have with recruiters. Obviously, we barely even scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Today, but I think that the concept, like you said, just getting it out there, just having these conversations, like no candidate, there's no superlative here. There are candidates who are nefarious. There are recruiters who are nefarious. There's no doubt about it. I would say an overwhelming majority are not trying to hurt. An overwhelming majority are not trying to harm or do anything that's, anything but in everyone's best interest, not even their own best interest. But it just doesn't come across always that way. Here's our buddy Chad. Doing a good job at hiring, including conducting interviews, is super difficult, but not putting in the time and effort will leave you complaining about not having good people. Yeah, I mean, it's such a great point, Chad. I mean, when I meet with CEOs or CIOs or anyone and they say, oh my God, if only I could hire people, all of my problems would be solved. And yet crickets on, interviewing people or moving people forward in the process. That is not your number one issue. If that's your reaction to that issue, it's just not.
Yep. I put money on it. I know Chad probably has opinions, but you know what I bet the number one issue actually is? Clarity of purpose. Yeah. Because you probably have enough people to do the work. They just don't know what they're supposed to be doing all the time.
Yep.
Just based on what I've seen. That's maybe a different live conversation.
We just keep piling these on, man.
I think it's good to have a lot to talk about.
Every conversation we have, there's more levels. No, this is so much fun.
Yeah, a lot of depth here. We keep saying it's going to be 10 minutes and we go a half hour because we have a lot to say about it. It's great.
Exactly. No, we appreciate everybody tuning in today. We're gonna keep it to this amount, just so people can watch it back. And Chad, one more comment from Chad, 100%. But no, we appreciate folks' comments and just joining us. I think we'll probably do, I don't know, we might do this again tomorrow. Who knows? We don't know what we're going to do.
Wildly unpredictable. Just note for candidates, no shades and no smoking on interviews. No smoking, no drugs or of any kind. Take the shades off. Be yourself, but be professional. Free advice.
Exactly. All right, Cory. Thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure.
Always.